Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. If you're joining me for the first time, I'm Will, and this is my Land Cruiser. Today I want to do a 30,000 kilometer review on my 1HZ turbo setup. For those of you who have been following along, you might remember that I put a JB J3 turbo on this HZ 30,000 Ks ago, along with a high performance diesel Series 2 top mount intercooler. I've got a 3-inch stainless exhaust from PPD, and I got this tuned at High Performance Diesel themselves on the 4-wheel dyno. So today I want to go into quite a bit of depth about how I went setting this up on my HZ, the tips and tricks I've used to keep this lasting so long. I want to look at the price that it's cost from start to finish for the turbo conversion, so you can get an idea for yourselves. We're going to take it out and do a quick cruise on the highway, and then bring it back and look at blow-by and some stuff like that, just to show that it's still holding up really well, and hopefully bring you some peace of mind in the turbo HZ process. So first of all, I get asked a lot about why I turbocharge the HZ, because they are a naturally aspirated engine. That's how they came out. They are naturally retarded in the timing, which is why they last forever and, do hundreds of thousands of Ks. But they, in saying that, they have not a lot of power. I think the HZs make 50 kilowatts at the wheel stock, and this was making about 170 Newton meters. So nothing special, and you're dropping back gears to go up hills. It takes you all day to get to 100k an hour. If you're not in a rush, it's not a big deal. They're still a great tourer. They're still an indestructible engine. But for my needs, I felt like I needed to go a little bit faster. And turbos are a lot of fun, and I'd never done much with one before. So I thought, why not, venture myself and go ahead and put a kit in myself and just see the difference. And there was no videos for the JB kit at the time on YouTube, so I went ahead and filled that hole. So you're looking at a 500,000 K old 1HZ, and you can see here we've got our lovely Eclipse turbo manifold and our J3 JB turbo down there, which is a CT26 shape. So it has the same flange as the 100 series turbo, and what have we got? The squarer flange that goes onto the manifold there. So don't ask me if that's a T3 or T4, I'm not sure, but that's it there. And then you can see we've got a slightly custom exhaust that has raised a bit of confusion, but basically I've got the dump pipe out of a 100 series kit from PPD and the 105 series 1HZ exhaust kit, because unfortunately the 100 series kit doesn't go under a 105. You can see here that the 100 series actually comes with a little probe there. So I've got a post turbo probe for my EGTs, and I'll go over the gauges in a minute. But okay, so this is our JB turbo, sweet around about 14 PSI, and that's what we're running it at, about 13.7. That's going through our Series 2 high performance diesel top mount cooler, which is an absolute beauty. Comes with a thermo fan under here, and it keeps my exhaust temps on the highway to about 250 degrees. And from there, this goes nicely into the manifold. You can see we've got our little aluminium adapter plate there for the inlet manifold. You might notice here too that we're picking up the boost over here, and that's going through our boost teeth. Don't mind my mounting for it. High Performance Diesel did put in an aluminium mount there, but I drive some pretty rough roads, some shocking potholes, and big heavy springs, so it wasn't a fan of that, but it's still doing its job. And then I've teed the boost line at that T-piece there, and the boost line goes back into the cab to the gauges. All right, then here in the cab you can see we've got our 4x4 Concepts pillar pod, which I love so much more than my old setup. Some of you might remember that. And we've got some cheap old SAS gauges in here that are not necessarily reliable, but they do the job just fine for now. Now, for those of you who might be curious, because I didn't make it completely clear in my video how I went about the oil feed and return, you can see here, please don't mind all the power steering fluid, classic 105 trait. But there is the oil return, and 30,000 later, there is not a drop of oil around that. So that's held in really well. You can see I've got the oil feed attached to that because I actually brought that around the back of the engine. I'll show you that right now. So you can see here that I have grabbed the oil feed from the T-piece where the oil cylinder goes into the block there. And that braided line there comes out from that T-piece and heads around the back of the block, actually down behind the tappet cover, pretty much over the bell housing. I've cable tied that in as many places as I can. And of course that comes back around this side. You might be able to just see it way back there behind the exhaust temp probe. And it actually comes around underneath and goes up into the turbo feed. The next big question I get all the time is, are you worried you're going to blow the 1HZ up? Because it happens very often with turbochargers, and in particular cowboy tunes or just bad tunes. So that is my response to every time I get asked that, is I say, get yourself a good intercooler that's going to keep the exhaust temps cool, and get yourself a good tune, because that is essentially the two big things that are going to heat the pistons up enough to put holes in them or melt them. And that is the key, I think, to a safe, reliable tune. And of course, there's little things you can do, like I installed a turbo timer to let the oil cool down, because if you shut the engine off when the oil's too hot in the turbo, it can actually damage the inners of the turbo if that's carbonated in there too hot and things go wrong. The other thing you can do is hook up the coolant passages. As you can see, there is a spot for that right there. But I've been told that's not such a big deal with a journal bearing turbo, as long as you aren't getting the oil too hot. And yeah, I haven't had any problems so far. So something else that I think is worth mentioning about the longevity of any journal bearing turbo, in this case the JB turbo, is that these are finely tuned bits of equipment that are tuned to the milligram in the way that they spin, because at idle, your typical journal bearing turbo is spinning at 30,000 RPM. And to maintain the bearing, because these free floating journal bearing turbos require the oil to be the actual bearing around the shaft, between the shaft and the housing. So they require 25 PSI at idle to maintain the correct distance around the shaft to the housing. And to put that into perspective, your conrods require 15 PSI and your main bearings require about 10 PSI. So, you know, it's a very needy piece of equipment, and so it should be, because it is the fastest moving and hottest item on your engine. So it's really important to never start these dry. Always crack your, turn your fuel solenoid off or crack some injectors or something, so that this has a chance to fill with oil before it is actually spinning at 30,000 PSI, 30,000 RPM. And regular oil changes are so important, and regular air filter changes, making sure that there's no debris getting into the fins, and of course no oil breakdown inside the engine and turbo. The other thing that I possibly haven't been heaps clear about in the past is the cost of start to finish turbo conversion. So we're going to cover that right now really quickly. The turbo kit, including the turbo, oil feed, return lines and manifold, was $2,400. The intercooler from High Performance Diesel, Series 2 with the thermofan for the 105 series, $1,900. The exhaust kit, which is a PPD 3-inch stainless, was $600. And that goes all the way to the back here. And finally, the tune, including a boost tee for this 1HZ at High Performance Diesel themselves. Don't quote me on it, because prices may change. I don't really know how that all goes consistently, but it was $350 at the time, and that's including the install of this boost tee. So without including gauges, you're looking at $5,250 start to finish turbo conversion. The only labour that was ever involved in this was the tune. Yeah, apart from that, I did it all myself, and yeah, just over 5 grand. So I think that is pretty good for the power increase I got. If you don't know much about that, please go back and watch my video on the tune and you'll see just how much difference this made. Alright, so before I get onto the highway and do this 0 to 100 test, just to show the difference between back when it was stock compared to how it is now, there's 2 things that should hinder my performance a little bit. And the first one is that I've got 33-inch mud terrain tyres on now. And the second is that I've got a big flat roof rack, which should pull me up a little bit because of wind resistance. But you should still see a noticeable difference from when it was naturally aspirated. We're gonna have another go. Here we go. All right, stationary and go. Right there. So as you can see, it's not a race car, it's a 3.5 ton brick, but it definitely picks up a lot faster than the 35 seconds it used to take it to get to 100k an hour. So now that I've got the Cruiser up to operating temperature after that highway run, I want to do a blow-by test on it. A blow-by test is a good way to tell how much of the crankcase pressure is getting past the pistons through the combustion chamber, and it's a good way to tell normally how worn the rings might be, the piston rings, and it'll also very obviously tell you if there is a hole in one of your pistons, because it'll chuff like a train. So even though this engine has 500,000 Ks on it, that is very healthy diesel blow-by. You're always going to have a little bit of blow-by because of the gaps in the rings on the pistons. So yeah, that's really astounding for how many Ks is on this engine. That says to me my pistons are in really good condition, and so are the rings on them. So there you go, guys and girls. I hope you found this video reassuring maybe today in the 1HZ Turbo, because I know there are a lot of conflicting opinions out there. There's a lot of horror stories about tunes going wrong and turbos failing. And you know, this stuff happens, and sometimes it's due to just improper maintenance or, you know, dry starting turbos, anything like that. It all happens. So I hope that this video gave you some insight today. This is honestly a great setup, and you know, I'm not chasing incredible power figures. 85 kilowatts is about 112 horsepower. And yeah, I know a lot more people are getting a lot more out of their 1HZs, but it's just a conservative tune and turbo, about a $5,000 setup. And it's given me over 50% more power compared to stock. So I'm really happy with that. This thing is just a joy to drive. I love it. You know, it's not always about the power, it's the sounds, and hearing that turbo spool and the 3-inch exhaust, it's a lot of fun. And that's what it's all about. That's what all this four-wheel drive mod stuff is about. It's just having fun and having a go. So I hope you enjoyed this video today, maybe even learnt something. And please remember to put any questions you have down in the comment section below. Find me on Instagram. I'm always answering questions and feedback there. And, you know, you guys give me ideas for new videos and stuff as well. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate all of you, and I'll catch you in the next video.